The PlayStation Portable or PSP launched almost 15 years ago and became a real challenger to Nintendo in the handheld market. Selling over 80 million units worldwide was an excellent feat for Sony, despite being widely outsold by the Nintendo DS, who had over 154 million units. Overall, the PSP still achieved being the 10th best-selling console of all time, outselling the likes of the NES, SNES, Xbox One, and so far the Nintendo 3DS.
Hi guys, I'm Zach and this is GG Fist Bump. Today we'll be talking about the Sony PlayStation Portable. What I have here is actually a PSP 3000 model which I bought second-hand about a decade ago.
Development for the PSP was announced in a press conference before E3 2003. We haven't seen how it would look yet, but technical details were already presented. Because of its multimedia capabilities, Sony Computer Entertainment President and CEO Ken Kutaragi called it the Walkman of the 21st century. It was in E3 2004 when Sony officially unveiled the PSP. People were excited. It was a huge step up in graphics compared to the previous generation of handhelds. The release date was set on December 2004 for Japan and spring 2005 for North America. During the same period, Nintendo also released their newest handheld, the Nintendo DS. Given the graphical advantages of the PSP and many third-party publishers expressing their support, Sony looked like a real threat to Nintendo in the handheld scene. While both sold pretty well at launch, Nintendo's strong base, cheaper price, and casual appeal allowed it to sell almost double the amount of the PSP worldwide.
Now from where I'm from, the PSP was the ubiquitous handheld console. I would rarely see Nintendo DS users out in the open, and if I do, it would be little kids.
With the PSP, you can definitely feel its presence in the Philippines, even in smaller mall stalls that sell second-hand cell phones. Common folk, even those who aren't into gaming, would know what the PSP is than the Nintendo DS. During the early days of the 3DS, a gamer from a local Street Pass group once told me, the PSP is so popular here that it would be more eye-catching to pick pockets than the rather new Nintendo 3DS at the time. So what contributed to the local popularity of the PSP? That's because of easy piracy, brand recognition, and high-quality graphics. To give more context, during the 90s, the PlayStation brand gained quite a following with the PS1 because of the widespread availability of cheap copy games. A PS1 CD can cost about $1 in the mid to late 90s. And this isn't limited to small-time vendors. Big toy dealers like Toy Kingdom and SM Toyland also sold pirated games for as low as 35 pesos. If you can compare that to the cost of Nintendo 64's cartridge games, PS1 games were definitely an appealing choice in families with tight budgets. When the PS2 followed, DVD backups were also cheap. You can still see them being sold in some stalls today. Not long after the release of the PSP, piracy also became relatively easy. Several stalls offered PSP jailbreaking services for those who can't do it on their own. And while there's an option for playing backups on the Nintendo DS through R4, Sony already had the momentum with two back-to-back console successes. At the time, it was the handheld of choice for gamers in a third-world country like the Philippines.
Usually when I started buying my own console starting with the PSP, I get it second-hand to save on money. The first and only time I bought brand new was when I got my Nintendo Switch November last year from an online shopping sale.
Some of the games I really enjoyed were Tekken 5 and 6, Final Fantasy Crisis Core, Grand Theft Auto Vice City and Liberty City Stories, God of War, Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, Dissidia, Patapon, Resistance Retribution, and the third birthday. Although I didn't play it, Monster Hunter Freedom Unite created several small groups that added to the PSP's popularity as a social multiplayer handheld. The PSP's superior graphics also had an edge versus the Nintendo DS. PC emulation was already possible back then for the DS with no $GBA, but not for the PSP. This was also a factor why I chose the PSP first given my limited budget. I could have still played Pokemon on PC if I wanted to. While the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance proved to be popular handhelds in the 90s and early 2000s, the PSP further expanded the appeal of handheld gaming to the masses. And that is how the PSP became a big part of pop culture in the Philippines. Were you a Sony PSP fanboy? Or did you stick with Nintendo during the run of the DS? Maybe you had both. Which of the two did you like better? Just comment down below.
And with that, I think we're done. If you found this video interesting or entertaining, please like and subscribe to my channel for more content. Again, I'm Zach, and this is GG Fistbump.